Hey, what's up? I'm Mr. J. This is W.a.D. MTG. Today I'm going to do two videos. This is the first one, and the second one I'll talk about standard and my run at the RCQ last weekend. So this one I'm going to address some things that I haven't addressed yet, and I haven't had the time to. But now that I'm off work and I'm sitting here in beautiful Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, it's like 50 plus degrees and sunny and beautiful. And I'm from Detroit, where when I left Detroit, it was single digits. It was 1 or 2 degrees first thing in the morning, super cold, big wind chill. So I've been really productive today. I've got a lot done while I'm sitting here on my off time. I just figured I'd do these videos while I'm waiting for the constructed version of the Pro Tour to go off. So the things I haven't addressed yet. The first thing I haven't really got to address is the Magic movie. So the game nights came out and they debuted the news, and it seems like that's a good pick, right? They're the most popular YouTube. You could argue like the Professor has more subscribers, but who's really more popular? It's probably the game nights. I like both channels, but the game nights came out and they are Command Zone or whatever you want to call it came out and they dropped the news that Wizards of the Coast is teaming up with Legendary Studios to make a Magic movie. And not just a Magic movie, but a whole Magic cinematic universe. So they intend to do TV shows and stuff after this. Now, I'm guessing they went all in with money, right? Excuse me. So they probably spent a buttload of money off the strength of what they got going on with the Netflix show. So the Netflix show was announced like years ago, right? Like before COVID. So, it's 2025. That's a long time ago. So I think what they did was they started the Netflix show and then it wasn't really going anywhere. So they kind of like canceled the idea. And I think they brought in new people to produce it. And they took it back over and everybody thought, oh, we're not getting it. It's not going to happen. And in MagicCon Vegas, they came out and said, it is happening. It is done. And we're at the time where we're kind of editing and kind of doing that type of stuff, the final edits and whatever they had to do to get it produced and get it ready to go on Netflix. So that's something that we're going to see very soon is the Netflix adaptation. Now I'm guessing what they did was they probably showed the Netflix show, which I'm hoping is like anime style and graphic and a little more adult. Even though Magic is for like 14 and up or 13 and up or whatever. When you go play Magic, the enfranchised players are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s even. So most people you'll see are, like middle-aged. They're like 30s and 40s. Most people you'll see that are really enfranchised players. But because of the way Magic is today, they have also brought in a bunch of young people again. So when you go to an LGS, you will see a good handful of Gen Z players that are, in their early 20s or mid 20s that are playing Magic. And you won't see as many people my age. I'm 39. So you won't see as many people my age that are actually at an LGS. But we're still there, right? We're probably the most enfranchised players in Magic are probably the millennials. And so you'll see a lot more people in their 30s than you'll see probably in their 20s or 40s or 50s or 60s. But Magic is one of them games where you're never too young to play, really. If you can read and comprehend it, then it's a great game, and you're never too old to play, especially if you've been playing for a long time. I've been playing since 2007. So the movie, right? I got a little off track there. The movie, I do believe because of they must have polled like the Netflix and showed the show to people and they really liked it, or it's supposed to be really good. So off the strength of these polls, they're probably like, okay, now we're all in. Let's get our product out there. Let's get more people to the game. And Universes Beyond is definitely doing a great job accomplishing that, as Commander is the most popular format to play in Magic today. That being said, I do think Standard's wide open. Go play Standard, man. It's fun. It's wide open. So with Commander being the most popular thing and Universes Beyond bringing in a lot of new players, I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to target a younger audience and get teenagers to really like the story and get involved. And I do believe the Netflix show is probably going to be really good. The animated series is probably going to be really good. And they, based off of that, they're probably all in. They put all this money. They just sold the studio, right? They had a movie studio. Hasbro had their own movie studio. Now, of course, they got Transformers and G.I. Joe and all this stuff, right? Monopoly and this kind of stuff that they've done movies and stuff on before. But their movies haven't done that great. Even the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which I thought was fantastic, it underperformed because they spent a lot of money advertising that movie. So they spent almost as much, I believe almost as much as the movie cost to advertise so people would go see the movie. So I believe the movie was net even or a net loss with the advertising budget thrown in. Even though it was a great movie with Chris Pratt, or whatever his fucking name is. Chris something. The pretty boy from Wonder Woman, right? So he played in it. I don't know. I think the other dude's the dude from Community in Jurassic Park, right? So I don't know. I thought the Dungeons and Dragons movie was great. I thought the last Transformers movie, the Beast Wars movie, was pretty good. I've liked all the other Transformers movies. I have faith that Legendary Studios will make a good Magic movie. So with that being said, other people are talking about who should star as this and that. I don't really care. Just make it good. Who cares who stars in it? Oh, it's Chris Pine. Chris Pine. That's the guy, right? So he's the pretty boy from Wonder Woman that played in the Dungeons and Dragons. Not Chris Pratt. He's the Jurassic Park dude. So, all right. So Legendary Studios is making it. We don't care who stars in anything. What I do care about is what story they decide to tell. So, with the current Magic story in mind, with the shilling of Loot, who is cute. I like Loot. I think he's a cool character. I don't really like how Thunder Junction had like the end of the story where Jason Vraska opened the vault and they find Loot, and then in the set itself, there's all these other cards that are from the vault, right? Like was supposed to be that side set, like Aftermath, that they just threw into Thunder Junction, that made Thunder Junction a great set. I really like that set because of the From the Vault cards, or whatever the hell you call them cards. Like the Sword of Wealth and Power, the Dinosaur was really good. The Molten Duplicator, or whatever, was great. The Synthesizer and the other blue card, the Helm, for artifacts were really good. They're all great. Those cards, all the mythics that came like out of the vault or whatever it was, Big Score is I think what they called it. Those cards were all great. So I didn't really like how they kind of did that, and the story was, oh, there's nothing in here but Loot, but we have all this slush art that we were gonna throw at you in like a money shield set, and that didn't go over very well with Aftermath, so we're gonna jam all the cards in here and then come out with Assassin's Creed, which is basically the same fucking thing, like a money shield set where you don't get as many cards, and you open a box and you get a bunch of duplications of the same card, and you like feel like you're really wasting your money. So I didn't really like how they did that, but I did like the Thunder Junction set, but the story is lackluster, right? So the recent stories have been kind of lackluster, with the exception of Bloomborough. Bloomborough was a pretty good story. I kind of like Duskmorn as well, but some of the shit didn't make sense, right? And with the new Aetherdrift story, it doesn't really make sense either. They're like contradicting themselves with their story. They're just kind of, it's like Magic the Hattening, right? Where they got, murders at Karloff Manor. Just put hats on all these people that are supposed to be in Ravnica instead of making it, what's the other set that it probably should have been? I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of that set. But it was a set from a couple years ago where they went to get the Halo and found Jin-Gitaxias there, and all this other stuff was going on. It was right after the Kamigawa set. It was right after that. It was right before that. New Capenna. That's the set I'm talking about. So Murders at Karloff Manor shouldn't have been Ravnica. I think they should have changed the story. I think it fit better on New Capenna than Ravnica. So let's just throw detectives and Clue and hats on all these Ravnica characters. It didn't really fit for me, right? And the Aetherdrift stuff seems like there's a lot of slush art in there, but it doesn't really fit for me either. Why not? Why didn't we just go back to Amonkhet? The best cards in Aetherdrift represent Amonkhet, and they supposedly won the race. but there's a lot of like inconsistencies and stuff in the story lately. So I don't want the movie story to be a modern story where it's like Jason Vraska find loot and loot goes everywhere. Loot's, in Duskmorn, loot's in Aetherdrift, loot. He's freaking Pikachu and Grogu all combined into this, magic version of Baby Yoda type shit. Like, I like loot. A lot of people in the community don't like loot because of that reason. Because he's clearly a corporate shill character, where they're putting him on us because that's what's selling right now. That's what they think is popular. Is this cute representative of your IP? Now, I do like him, right? But I don't think the story should be about that. I think the story in the Magic movie should be about one or two particular things, and I'm going to get into that. So a lot of people are saying Brothers War. Now, Brothers War would, I think Brothers War would make a spectacular story. But to tell the story of Brothers War, you got to go back a little bit, right? So Magic's got all these novels and 30 plus years of storyline and history. And the storyline doesn't start with Brothers War. Brothers War is one of the fan favorite stories. It's an old story, and we just recently revisit it with Teferi going back in time to kind of witness the events of the Brothers War and what happened there. He also kind of, he did the whole butterfly effect thing, right? Like, so he didn't not interact with everything. He did interact, and I think there's some issues that might come up in future story where the timeline might have been thrown off because of what Teferi's been doing recently. But the original story of Brothers War, you can't really tell that story without telling the story of the Thran, without telling the story of Yawgmoth and the discovery of Phyrexia. So with that being said, I think that would probably be a better story to tell. Let's tell the original story of Phyrexia and Yawgmoth. Maybe you can get into the Brothers War. Maybe we can get into the portal of Phyrexia and the Thran and the Power Stones and all this that'll lead up to the Brothers War. So I think they can do a series of stories. And there's only a couple real big bads in all of Magic, right? So one of like the final boss big bads in the entire length of the story of Magic the Gathering is the Phyrexians. They're the most horror, the most grotesque to look at. And they kind of assimilate like other sci-fi, like the Borg and Star Trek. They assimilate everything with the Phyrexian oil. So when New Phyrexia was created years later, which is years ago now, in Mirrodin, it was because I believe it was a single drop of Phyrexian oil eventually corrupted Mirrodin and turned Mirrodin into New Phyrexia. I believe it was off of just a single drop. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, comment, subscribe. Say something down there. If I'm off here, let me know. But I believe that's what happened. What created New Phyrexia and was able to lead us to the story we've seen recently over the last several years with, I believe starting, when did it start? It went into New Capenna and it went into Kamigawa, but it started at, was it Kaldheim? Yeah, it was Kaldheim. It started with Kaldheim in the World Tree, right? Where they needed the Sapperling to make their own World Tree, the World Ender, or whatever they called it. And they were able to branch that off to go into all these different realms for the Phyrexian War that we just witnessed, where the Phyrexians invaded the multiverse and was able to send their soldiers and into all these different areas to fight off. And I thought that story was great, the recent story. But it had some plot holes right at the end. At the end, it had some plot holes, some major plot holes. They just were able to cure their completion. All these planeswalkers that got completed just were able to get saved, right? Jace just survived with Vraska to lead into this newer story that we've got into where, everybody got de-sparked and only a few planeswalkers still have their spark. Dude, Jace died, bro. He died as a completed, and got completed by Vraska, who also died. And they're just, it seems like plot armor like a motherfucker, right? Like, they're just kind of trying to save their IP instead of really doing the work to make the writing great. When the writing was great, old magic. So if you're gonna do a movie, let's do it about old magic. Let's do the original story of the Phyrexians. On screen, I do believe that just the nature of what a Phyrexian creature looks like and how it's corrupted and completed and like the scary lifelike robotic creature where it's got what do they call them, they're like cyborgs kind of, right? Like they're bioorganisms, but they're also like mechanical, so biomechanical and horror. So I really think that's probably the winner, is to start with the Thran and Yawgmoth and his story and lead that into the Brothers' War and Urza's story and the fight with his brother and leading to the defeat of Yawgmoth with the living weapon or whatever that he created. I believe it's something like that, where Urza ended up defeating Yawgmoth with. So I do believe that is probably the winner story. And now that's before the Praetors came in, because the Praetors came in New Phyrexia. So we're talking about the original Praetors. We're talking about Yawgmoth. We're talking about Gix. And if we tell that story, I think that story is probably the winner. But second place, the other story that I think would do really well is the Gatewatch story. All right, so these are the biggest characters that are recognizable in Magic today. Not Loot. It's the Gatewatch. It's Liliana, right? It's Chandra. These are the people that everybody love, right? It's a Johnny. It maybe Gideon, right? Gideon, even though he's dead now. But these are the people, the characters in Magic that made Magic what it is today, is the Planeswalkers. So if you tell the story of the Gatewatch, I think that's going to be a fan favorite story. I think it's going to be a story where Magic boomers are going to go in and we're going to watch the movie. We're going to take our kids or whatever. I don't have kids, but most people do. That's the type of story you take your kids to go see that, and to go see these characters that you love. Okay. Nisa, the original Gatewatch and how they banded together and that story. Now that story, other people have commented, and I've seen what they had to say about that particular story. Like, it would take some backtracking to try to catch everybody up to speed about what a Planeswalker is, how they got their sparks. So there could be like an origin segment that kind of tells a little bit of backstory, some characterization, so we kind of know what world we're in here, what we're into. We don't want to just open up and you've got, Chandra and Jace facing off, throwing fire and water magic at each other, and everybody's just like, well, what the fuck's going on? Magic players are going to know what's going on. But the average individual, the average child, or the young person whose parents takes them to see this movie, and so they like these characters and get into Magic and be their Wizards' target audience for the future going forward, for that to be what it needs to be, you've got to draw in these people, these kids and stuff, to be future and franchise players, and buy Magic. You've got to tell an origin story. So with the War of the Spark and the Gatewatch story being really popular with a lot of these same characters, the other big bad is Nico Bolas, right? So there's only so many characters in all Magic that can be these really great, recognizable characters that can tell a prolific story, that's engaging, that has an origin, that you can do some characterization, and you can throw people into the environment and what they're used to, or what they're going to get, what they're going to see, and accept the story that they're being told without just doing just a generic, oh, this is high fantasy. Oh, this is just they got a lot of comedy in it because they, hired some big actor or whatever that's kind of comedic, that gives it a comedic twist. So I don't think they really need to go that route. They need to go the compelling story route in the movie. And to do that, I believe they need to tell the original story of the Thran, getting into the Phyrexians that could lead to the Brothers' War, or they need to tell the story of the Gatewatch, which also continues and expands, and they have recognizable big IP characters like the Praetors, like Urza, like the Planeswalkers, like Ugin, and these types of people. We're getting ready to go into Dragonstorm. We're getting ready to go into Final Fantasy, and then the Edge of Eternities, the space set. That's not the enfranchised stuff. Loot and these other stories is not the enfranchised stuff. The enfranchised stuff is Nico Bolas, the Phyrexians. So that's what I got to say about that. They just need to tell a compelling story, and they need to tell a recognizable story, and they need to start off with something that's a fan favorite, so they can expand and do Netflix shows or whatever IP picks them up in the future, or whatever conglomerate picks it up in the future to do the cinematic universe and expand on the stories, so they can do a TV show and an anime, and then they can catch up to current events, and then they can tell their story about the next sets coming out, like they do in, like, say, Yu-Gi-Oh, for example. The cartoon comes out, people watch the cartoon's kind of ahead of its time, the sets come out that represent the cartoon. In order to do that, they need to be years ahead. So that's the third option for the movie, is they tell a story that hasn't happened yet. So after years of production, when the movie's finally ready to come out, the movie can tell a story of current events in Magic. If they don't do it that way, what the hell is the point of telling the story of current events in Magic? Everybody will be lost. Nobody will know what the fuck's going on. They'll be like, oh, well, there's a fucking Baby Yoda Pikachu-like character running around. It's supposed to be cute. Everybody's supposed to love it. And what the hell else is going on? Like, nobody knows. Is there a big bad in Magic right now? No, we're in Ether Drift, right? It's telling a backstory. Chandra is trying to get the spark. Chandra's mom's there. Chandra wants to be able to run away with Nisa and have their happy relationship and all this kind of stuff, and be able to do what they want to do. The people from Amon Cat won this spark, right? So Team Amon Cat won this. So Amon Cat characters are going to be able to planeswalk using the Ether Spark. You got the characters from Duskmourn, like Winter is trying to win so he can escape his deal or whatever with freaking what's his name? Damn, I forget his name. From Duskmourn. It's on the tip of my tongue. I don't remember it. So, you got all this stuff going on. It's Magic the Hattening. Now they're in race cars. And what's next? We've got a couple good sets coming this year. We've got the Edge of Eternities, which is kind of the same type of thing, right? It's Magic in space. Magic with cars. The next set's Tarkir Dragonstorm. That's the only real set we're getting for the rest of this year that's going to feel like Magic. So are we really trying to tell current Magic story? No, they're trying to shill for all these IPs. You can't have fucking Magic story and you got Spider-Man swinging through, fighting Cloud and Sephiroth coming in to team up with Spider-Man to fight fucking Yawgmoth. You can't do that. It's not going to work, right? So they have to tell a compelling story, a enriched history story in Magic that people love, right? A beloved story from the past. And I think that's what they have to do to make it successful. So what else did I want to talk about today? Well, we've seen... I guess that is what I want to talk about. Final Fantasy and Tarkir Dragonstorm. So we've seen some previews with Final Fantasy and Tarkir at MagicCon Chicago, right? It just started yesterday. Last week was the Final Fantasy previews, so we've seen a handful of those. And I think they're doing that because Ether Drift didn't perform that well. It didn't perform that well. It did have some powerful cards in it. It did have some good cards in it. But even the collector boxes on average were losing like $120. So there wasn't a lot of value. It had great cards. I really like the Verge Cycle. I like a lot of the cards, right? Like the Ether Spark's great. The Gilded Lotus is great, or whatever the new Lotus is called, Radiant Lotus. It's a great card. All right, so there's a lot of good stuff in there. But there's like maybe 10, 15, 20 cards that'll be really good in Commander, and maybe 10, 15, 20 good cards that'll be pretty decent in Standard, and it's not a high value set. So immediately they're trying to shill Final Fantasy. Even though Final Fantasy isn't the next set, it's Tarkir. So today, I wake up today and I look at my phone and I see all these Tarkir previews. Tarkir looks fantastic. It looks amazing. So why the hell are they already trying to show Final Fantasy? Because they know it's going to do so well. So also looking online and doing some investigating, the pre-sale orders went up for Final Fantasy already. Sold out immediately. Sold out. So in a couple more weeks, as time progresses and time moves forward to Tarkir into Final Fantasy, this product is going to be available. But like Lord of the Rings, it's going to do really, really well. They're going to make a fuck ton of money off of Final Fantasy. Just how many people played Final Fantasy? Like, my entire generation played Final Fantasy. All the Magic Boomers are going to want to go out. All the people that are just like in Lord of the Rings, all the people that were Lord of the Rings fans went out and they bought into Magic just so they could play Lord of the Rings, collect the Lord of the Rings cards, and then learn Magic secondary. So the Final Fantasy people are going to do the same thing. They're going to go buy up all the Final Fantasy stuff and just to collect the Final Fantasy stuff. And then that probably is going to be an entryway or a gateway for a new group of players to come into Magic because they love Final Fantasy. So they're going to shill the hell out of Final Fantasy. That's why we got the previews early. The Cactus card, I think it's awesome. It gets 10,000 power. It's combos galore. It'd be a really bad card in Standard. There's not a whole lot you can do in Standard. You might be able to fling it or do some other things. But it's going to be a great casual card. It's going to be an awesome casual card in Commander. Now, you're not going to see it in like CEDH because it costs 7 fucking mana. It's got to be better than that to see play in CEDH. Or even in like high power tables, you probably really won't see it in a lot of high power tables. Because at high power, you really have to optimize the hell out of your deck and cut down that mana curve quite a bit. So unless you're finding ways to cheat it into play, which there are a bunch of ways to do that in Commander, or cheat it out of your graveyard, which there's also a bunch of ways to do, I don't really see the Cactus being the biggest thing. I think you're going to see it in a lot of games. You're going to see it in a lot of level 3 decks. People are going to do a lot of things with it. They're going to win the game with it. They're going to hit people with the Lich Lord. They're going to hit people with Flaying. They're going to do a lot of different stuff with it, right? They're going to swords it and then use, what is that card? It's the old Ether card where you gain life. And then once you have over 50 life, you can just shoot everybody down to the table, do 50. So you swords it yourself with your own swords and then gain 10,000 life in the combat step. Then you can just use that card to kill everybody. And so you're going to see a lot of that at like casual tables. But otherwise, I think it's a little overhyped. Good card. I'm excited to use it. But it's not like a $50 card, right? So the price value of Final Fantasy is way too high. So I understand they need to pay for the licensing and all this stuff. And because of the licensing of these Universes Beyond products, I do advocate for players to buy into these sets. Because for me, I look at it as like these sets, they have to pay so much money for the licensing that a lot of these cards won't be able to be reprinted. They won't be able to put another shell on it like they used to do with Secret Lair and do in-universe version of Universe Beyond. I don't think they're really going to be able to do that. They might be able to do that to some degree. Now, they probably, in the contracts, have it writ up so they can do that to some of these cards for the future. But do you really see them reprinting the One Ring under a different shell? Probably not, right? Probably not. So I view these sets, Spider-Man, Marvel, all this stuff, I view these sets as pseudo reserve list. A lot of this stuff we'll never, ever see again. It'll never get reprinted again, which is why the special edition Lord of the Rings boxes are going for like $1,200 fucking dollars right now. So buy it when it's hot. But, you know, with that being said, I don't like the price point. The pre-sales right now for Final Fantasy for a Play Booster box is going for like $210. That is really high. That is a standard set. It's going to get bought out by Commander players. It's going to get bought out by Final Fantasy lovers. People aren't going to be playing a whole lot of Final Fantasy in standard. And if there are some cards that stand out as like standard power level cards, or cards that are really efficient, low mana value, then the standard players that want to build around these cards are just going to buy a playset of that card online. They're not going to run out and buy boxes and boxes. You better throw some real good lands in there if you want them to do that. You better do something. You better do something. Because I do think not Lord of the Rings, but I do think Final Fantasy is going to do really well. I think it's going to have really hype sales numbers, and they're going to say, hey, look, it's it either surpassed Lord of the Rings and became the best-selling set, or it's right under that, and we're doing so well with these Universes Beyond, so let's keep churning it out, keep churning it out, keep churning it out. But if you think for a second that Avatar: The Last Airbender is going to do as good as Final Fantasy, you're wrong. It's not. If you think Avatar: The Last Airbender is going to do anywhere near as good as Marvel's Spider-Man, that set's probably going to crush Lord of the Rings. But Avatar, probably not so much. They're going to have to jam-pack some really powerful cards into these sets in order to make them bangers, right? And if they do, there's no avoiding these sets. People have to engage with these sets and this material, or they're just going to get power crept out of their favorite format or their favorite game, right? So that's pretty much all I have to talk about. I talked about the movie. I talked about the storylines. I got into the cons of Tarkir, Dragonstorm, and the Final Fantasy previews, and how powerful they are, and what these sets are costing. And that's pretty much all I got for this topic. See you next time. I've got another video coming out I'm going to do right here on Standard, on my experiences at the RCQ last week. I'm Mr. J. This is W.A.D. MTG. I'm out.